Hello everyone. Is my voice audible, guys?
Yes.
Yeah. So let's start. So is everyone able to create React application using White tool? Okay. So because this is the first process which we have to complete at any cost. So in last session, basically we have just seen how to create a React application using White. How to create a React application. White. This is what we have seen in the last session. So in today's session, let's work with this application. Okay. So if you see that, this is what the application is created. Some bunch of folders are created. Let me open directly this in the VS Code. So my application name is app demo. And in that, there are three folders, node underscore module, public, SRC, and there are some bunch of files here. Okay. So first, we will see how to run this particular application. So how to run this particular application means for that, you have to go to your terminal and you have to just add a command npm run dev. The moment you use this command and click on enter, internally that White tool will start its development server. In that server, this application will be hosted. Now, who will do all those things? That tool will do. So you just need to give the instruction. How to give the instruction? By just adding this particular command. The moment server is live, then you will be able to access your application using this particular URL. Okay, let me just run again. Let me copy this part. Go to the browser and just add that, click on enter. Now here we are able to access our application. Now here you are able to see some user interface, some React logo, some White logo, some content. Here you have one button. If you click on this button, this count will increase. Here there is some content like this. Some user interface is shown on the screen. Now, how this user interface is shown on the screen means this tool created one component called app component. It created one component called app component, and that component is created in one file called app.jsx file. They have created one JSX file. So how to create a JSX file means the way how we create now a normal file, just you have to give the extension .jsx. So inside your JSX file, you can write JavaScript code or you can write your JSX code. And inside this file, they have created one component and they have created one app component. And this app component, inside this app component, they have created some UI. They have created some UI. What UI they have created means whatever you are seeing on the screen, that UI they have created. Here, whatever UI you are seeing, this entire UI they have created inside that file. App.jsx. Now, where you will find this file means you will find this file inside the SRC folder. So we have a SRC folder. Inside that, you will find that file. So till now, what we used to do, we used to create one HTML file. We used to write some basic code of HTML. We used to take a script tag, and inside that script tag, we used to create components. So what basically industry recommends, create one file for one component. Whenever you are working with React application, inside your SRC, if you want to create any component, then every component should be in the separate JS or JSX file. You can create JavaScript file or you can create JSX file. But in one file, you should have only one component. In one file, you should have only one component, and that is just a recommendation. If you create multiple components in your one JavaScript file or in one JSX file, then there is no problem. Even if you create multiple components in one file, there is no problem, but it is not recommended approach. The recommended approach is one component should be in one file only. Now that file can be JavaScript file or it can be JSX file. So one component, one file, and we are going to follow that particular advice. So in one JavaScript file or in one JSX file, you will have only one component. And one more recommendation, what we are going to follow means our file name should be same as a component name. Your file name and your component name should be same. Okay, even if you give different names, there will be no problem. But in future, you might fall into a confusion state. That is why the best way to create your file and component is keep same name for them. So by just seeing the file name, you can guess exactly what component we have in that particular file. So two rules we have to follow from now. One component should be in one file and your file name should be same as your component name. Now in your application, if you are creating 100 components, then you have to create 100 files. 100 files. This is what the recommended approach is. And all the components we will create inside the SRC folder only. So SRC is the folder where we create our components, where we create our CSS files. So basically inside this SRC only, we create our JS files or JSX files or CSS files or CSS files. Okay, so let me document here whatever I have said. The first point is every component should have their own file. Second, component name should be same as a file name. All JSX, JS or CSS files should be created inside SRC folder only. So SRC is the folder which contains your JSX, JS or CSS files, CSS files. So these are the points what we have to remember. For example, let's assume that I want to create one component. So inside this SRC, if I want, I can directly create one file, something called header dot. You can create JS file or you can create JSX file also. Let's go with JSX file. I have created header.jsx. See, the moment I create this file, I got here React icon. Now, inside this file, what we have to do? Inside this file, we have to create one component. How to create component? For that, we have to use function keyword. Now we have to give the name for our component. So what is our file name? It is a header. So component name also you give header only. Now add return statement, add parenthesis, add one div, and whatever user interface you want to create, you can create. I'm simply adding here one h2 and I am saying that it's a header component. Header component. And for this h2, I want to do inline stylings. So how to do inline styling? Add style attribute equals to assign one curly brace. And inside this curly brace, we have to add one object. So if you want, you can create object outside or else directly here also you can create one object like this. And inside that object, you can add your CSS properties. So here I will simply say green. Now, once you have created your component, now this component you export from this particular file so that you can render this component in some other files. So what I will do, I will just export this particular component from this particular file. So for that, I am going with the default export. Now save it. This is again your JavaScript concept. This is not a React concept. Now go to the app.jsx. Here we have app.jsx. In this file, already one app component is created. So let me remove this part. Okay, just remove all this part. Right now, you don't know anything about it. Just remove this part, and whatever code is written inside this, just remove that everything. Remove that everything. Just a normal app component. Just add one div here and simply say one h2 and just say app component. This is the simply app component. Now, after this h2, here I want to call this header component. Or I can say that after this h2, I want to render my header component. Now, header component is in some other file. App component is in some other file. So already we are exporting that header component. So in app component, now we can import that header component. And now you can render here. Now, the moment you render your header component, you should be able to see your user interface here. So you got app component, you got header component. Now it is displaying exactly in the center. It is displaying exactly in the center. Why it is displaying exactly in the center? If you go to this app.css, here some CSS is written. So just remove this entire CSS. Okay. And if you go to index.css, here also they have written some CSS. Just remove that entire CSS. Now, if you remove all the CSS, you will find like this. App component, header component. So by default, that tool written some CSS in app.css, some tool has been written in your index.css. We have just removed it. We have just removed it. And we don't require this first line also. So whatever we know, we are just doing that part. Just this part is your JavaScript part. I hope you guys are aware about module scopes. Now, here you are able to see your user interface. The moment you do any changes, and if you refresh, now your tool will take care of doing all those changes on your screen. So explicitly, you need not to refresh your page. Automatically, your page will be reloaded whenever you are going to save your file. Now here we have just created one header component. So right now what you have to remember is these 3 points you have to remember. Every component should have their own file. It means every component should be created in a separate file. Component name should be same as file name. Whatever file name you are giving, give that name to your component. All JSX, JS or CSS files you should create inside SRC folder only. All these files should be created inside SRC folder only. So right now, let's just work with the SRC part. Slowly, we will understand what is this node underscore module, what is this public, and what all other files are. Now, in your entire application, in entire React project, there is only one HTML file, that is index.js. So this is the only file which is getting loaded in the browser whenever you enter this URL. Now inside this, if you see, they have written some code. Now here, if you see title, white plus React, so that's why here you got that. Now if I change that title, here if I say my React app, and if you save it, you will see your title will change. So your title got changed to My React App. Your title got changed to My React App. Now this is the link type and href. This is because of that icon. If I comment this part, you won't see that logo here. Let me just see. So this logo is not removed. Let me just go to main.jsx once. I comment this part. SVG. Yeah. Anybody knows why it is not removing now? I have commented here this code.
Is there any icon tags, icon or something?
This is because of index.html, this line. But here I have commented this part, right? I have put this. But still, it is not getting removed here. Why?
Can you please restart the server again?
Yeah, I have restarted it already. Okay, let's stop and
Maybe
restart.
cache on the browser. Close the browser.
Hmm. Now see, I will click on this. Now here I am able to access, but same URL I will try to access in some other browser now. Now let's suppose here in the Chrome I will try to access. Now here you are not able to see, but here you are able to see. Anybody can guess why? See, same URL I'm accessing here. I'm getting same page I'm able to access.
Browser cache.
Here you see URL.
Cache on the browser.
So while loading itself initially, it got loaded where we cannot change.
Mhm. Okay.
Browser cache.
What browser cache?
Like when we have initially loaded, it might have had it in the cache, and it's coming up
How
again.
can I can remove it, that part if I want to remove this part? Let's what I need to do. Okay. Do little bit research on this part, guys. The people who don't know the answer, do little bit research and try to find the answer. If I want to remove this, how I should remove. Okay. Now see, same thing if I'm accessing in Chrome, I'm not able to get that logo. If I suppose if I uncomment that lines, if I here I uncomment this part, and if I just go back to index.html, here if I add that code, If I save it, go back to my browser, I got it. Okay. Now here, if I uncomment it, and if I go back to my browser, now it is not visible here, but still it is visible here. Now, if you see in Chrome, it's not visible, but in Edge, it's visible. One more thing, if I just uncomment that code, now it will be visible in the Chrome also. It is visible in the Edge also. But if I comment it, now it will not be visible in the Chrome. Now it will be visible in the Edge. Still in Edge, it is visible. Now, can you tell me what is this problem? What do we call to this problem? In one browser, the functionality is behaving in different way, and in another browser, it is behaving in another way. What do we call to these problems?
Compatibility, browser compatibility.
Browser compatibility issues. So sometimes you will see that there will be some additional functionalities you will find in certain browsers, and same functionalities you will not find in any other browser. For example, if you go to this Facebook application, suppose if I'm accessing this Facebook application in my Edge browser, and this is our password, right? If I type something here, I'm getting here one symbol, right? Same Facebook application, if I try to access in my Chrome, if I type something here in the password, here also we are getting, because here they might have implemented it. They have taken care of. But if you just create one input here, let's suppose that I'm creating one input type equals to password. And if I save it, if I go back here, we got here, right? So the moment here I type, we are getting this I symbol where we can see and hide our password. But same thing if I go in the browser, Chrome browser, if I type here, now see, here you are not getting that I symbol now. I did not do anything, right? I just written one code, one line of code. That is, I have just added one text box. And if you see how that text box is behaving inside your Edge browser, if I type something here, I'm getting here I symbol. So if I click on this I symbol, this content will be visible. Again, if I click, it will be hidden. But same application I am trying to access in my browser. And here, if I'm typing something, I'm not getting that I symbol here. Right? To get that I symbol, we did not written any code. But here, Edge have written some code to get that I symbol. So if certain function, now this functionality is working in your Edge browser, but this functionality we don't have in the Chrome browser. So this kind of issues we call as a browser compatibility issues. Okay, so whenever you're writing the code, sometimes you have to take care of this browser compatibility also. So you should give same user experience to the users across all the browsers. So such kind of requirements also you will get whenever you are developing the projects. Okay, now see, Facebook resolved that issue. Now here, if I type something, here I'm getting this I symbol, and same Facebook application, if I try to access in my Chrome, there also, if I type something here, still I will get that I symbol there also. So they have taken care of this compatibility issue. So they are giving same experience to the user across different browsers. Okay, now this point came into picture. That's why I'm explaining. Yeah, let me remove this part right now. Let's come back here. Let's stick with this part. So what we have learned, we have just learned how to create a component now inside our React application. And where we have to create our components means our components we have to create inside the SRC folder only. Inside the SRC folder from now. Now you have created this component, right? Now this component, if I want to load in my browser, so this component code to whom I need to give? I have a React component in which I have created JSX elements. And all those JSX elements anyways will be compiled into React elements. Now this React component, if I want to show on the screen, then to whom I need to give this React component?
Index.
I have created a React component. Now this React component contains JSX element. Anyways, those JSX elements will be converted into React elements. Now all these React elements will create UI components for us. But to get created these UI components based on React elements, to someone we have to give this React elements. So who is that person to whom we have to give this React elements so that this UI components will be created?
DOM, React DOM.
Yeah, we have to give to the DOM, not React DOM. Okay. Now we have to give to the DOM. Now who will give React elements to the DOM? Who will give this React elements to the DOM? Because if you give this React elements to the DOM, then only UI components will be created. And once UI components are created, then only it will be visible on the web page. Okay, this
Babel compiler.
Babel work is to convert here. Babel comes here. Understand, we have created React component. In that React component, you have all JSX elements. Internally, those JSX elements will be compiled into React elements by Babel. So Babel role is here. Now, based on this React elements, we have to create UI components. So when your UI components will be created based on React elements, if your React elements are loaded in the DOM. Now the question is, who will give these React elements to the DOM? Because React cannot give. If you give these React elements to the DOM, then only UI components will be created by your browser and those will be visible on the web page.
React DOM render.
Yes, it will give React DOM. So this is what I wanted to listen. React DOM. So React DOM is another library, React is another library, DOM is something else. All these are different things. React DOM. Now, in our previous sessions, we have learned, right? This React DOM is providing us one function using which we can load our React elements into the DOM. What is the name of that function?
React DOM.render.
Yeah, it's a render function. And this render function we have to access using the object provided by this library, that is React DOM.render. Now the question is, in our application, where you will find this code? Now we have created here React application, right? So somewhere you should be able to find that code. So anybody can guess where you will find that? Just guess if you have some idea.
Which code, sir?
This code. React DOM.render part.
App.jsx.
No, in app.jsx you have app component. In app.jsx you have just app component. Apart from that, nothing.
Is it in config file?
So here if you see under SRC, you have some files. What are those files? You have one subfolder called assets where you can add here all the images. You have one app.css file. So in CSS file, we don't write JavaScript code. We have a JSX file. Here we can write JavaScript code, but already here we have only app component. Header.jsx, which we have created. Index.css, again, it's a CSS file. There is one more file called main.jsx. Now, if I click on this, here you will find some code.
Sorry to interrupt you, sir.
Yeah.
Sir, in app.css, we are going to write the CSS style rules now for the app.
We will write that later on. Right now, we don't have any styles here. We will write CSS code. That's it.
Okay.
Yeah, if you have guys doubts, once I have done with my explanation, then you can ask, okay? Now see, here we have a main.jsx. Now inside this main.jsx, there is some code present. Okay, so basically what you have to do is, you have to remove this entire code from here. Make it empty. The moment I make it empty, you won't see anything on the screen now. Now inside main.jsx file, we have to write this code. Okay, so for this, we require this React DOM. So how to get this React DOM means, simply you have to say import React DOM from, in double quotes, React DOM. You have to add first this statement. Now, what is this statement means? Basically, this is the path of a library, a React DOM library. Now, this library is already downloaded in your application. Who downloaded this library? This library is downloaded by your White tool. And it kept this library inside the node underscore modules folder. So somewhere in your node underscore module folders, you will find this library. So that library path we have to give. So any library which is kept in your node underscore module folder, for those libraries, no need to give complete relative path. Just if you mention the name of that library, internally your tool is going to understand this library is placed somewhere in the node underscore modules folder. So from this library, we are going to extract one object, that is React DOM. And using this object, React DOM object, we can call render function. Now to this render function, we have to pass two arguments. What are those two arguments? What are the arguments we have to pass to this render?
One is the HTML element,
One is HTML element. That
and
is
second, where to place that HTML element.
No, you told wrong. You have used wrong terms. First, first argument should be
app component.
your React component, right? Which component you want to load in the browser first. So I want to load app component. So do we have app component in this file? We don't have. Where is our app component? It is in the app.jsx. So from this file, we have to import that app component first. App from, then here you have to give the relative path. Now this app component you have to render here as a first argument, comma. Now here you have second argument you have to pass as a DOM element, exactly in your DOM where you want to add this React elements. So I want to add exactly inside my this div. Under this div, I want to add all my React elements. So we have to give the DOM element reference of this HTML element. So how to get the DOM element of this HTML element? For that, we use our basic JavaScript, that is document.getElement by ID of root. Now, why root? Because in the index.html, if you see, ID is root. That's it. Now, if you go back to the browser, you will be able to see your code. You will be able to see your code. So before, in our previous sessions, we used to write everything in one file. Now all your codes are getting separated into different files. So your React DOM code is in the main.jsx file. Your HTML code is in index.html file. And remaining React code, your React code, we are creating in JSX or JS files. So every component has its own file. So if you maintain like this your code in different files, in future, it will be very easy for us to handle our code, or it will be easy for us to handle our application. Suppose suddenly you got some issues with the header. Now you can directly go to the header file and you can resolve those issues. But if you write everything in one file, then finding out exactly where is my header component, where is that error will be a little bit challenging. Plus, you will have a clean and simple way to handle your components or handle your code. You have a clean and simple structure to handle your code here. Because we know that now in app.jsx, there is an app component. In header.jsx, there is a header component. So it looks very clean and clear structure. Now, if you see here in the main.js, we have written render. So basically this code will work till React 17 or less than React 17. Okay, so this code will work till React 17 or less than React 17 versions. From React 18, this code will not work. So there is a different way to load your React elements inside the DOM using React DOM. So that part we will see later on, because rightly, if like right now, if you get a job, now 90% there are chances that you will work on React 16 or React 17. So the latest version of React is right now React 18. And soon they are going to release React 19. So no one works directly on React 18 until unless any new project is started right now. So 90% people are working on the versions which are less than React 18, maybe 17 or 16. That's why we are getting habituated with this code. Once we get habituated with this code, once we have done half of our course, then I will explain you how we write same code in React 18. Right now, if you go to the browser and if you just right click and open inspect, you will just get one warning here. What is that warning? React DOM.render is no longer supported in React 18. So that function is not supported in React 18. Use create route instead. Okay, there is some other way, something called create route. That we will learn later on. Until you switch to the new API, your app will behave as if it's running on React 17. So right now your browser will think that we are using React 17 only, not React 18, because here we are using React DOM.render. So this is just a warning message. This is not any error message. It is just giving us a warning. So right now you can ignore this warning. Later on, I will show you how to remove this warning from our application. Okay. So understood how to create your React component, how to export, how to import, and in main.jsx, what is the code you have here?
Sir, no need to import index.html in main.jsx.
No need to import. Okay.
In that case, can we have one more root element? Will it throw any error? Get element by ID root we are saying, right? So suppose in another HTML, if we have a root element again.
You can have only one HTML file for your entire application. You cannot have more than one. That is what your single page application is. So you can have only one HTML file. If you want here, you can add another div element and you can add here ID equals to something else. Now, if you want here, your element should be loaded, then you have to just change that reference in the main.jsx. Here instead of root, now you have to say container, so that all your React elements will load now inside this element. Now here, it's not mandatory you have to take div only. I can take paragraph also if I want. But generally we prefer div because by default div doesn't have any kind of styles added by the browser. Okay, if you want, you can add that code. How to check? Just right click, go to the inspect and go to these elements. Here you have to check. Already I have shown you, right? Right now everything is adding in the root. Now you take another container, add that container reference and check whether it is loading in root only or it is loading in the container. That experiment you guys can do. Okay. So now let's come back here. Now what happens whenever this is, let's assume that this is your browser. And in this browser, index.html page is loaded. So whenever you hit this URL, index.html page is loaded. Now in this index.html page, we are loading first our app component. We are loading app component. Inside this app component, we are rendering header component. So header component will be loaded. Header component will be loaded. So this is how in this sequence your things will happen. So this one is your browser. This is your index.html. This is app component. This is your header component. This is your header component. So here I will add browser. This is your index.html. This is your app component. And this one is your header component. Right now, this is the sequence.
App component equal to main, right, sir?
Pardon?
App component equal to main.
Yeah, it is parent component. Okay, any component that you give to React DOM directly, that is considered as a parent component. Parent component means this is the first component which will load in your browser. That is the meaning.
Okay.
Okay. Now suppose my requirement is, let's assume that this is my browser. In this browser, anyways, index.html page is loading. Now in this index.html page, I don't want to load app component. I want to load directly my header component only. Just I want to show my header component. I don't want to load my app component. I want to load only header component so that on my screen, it should show me only header component UI. So what changes I need to do for this? Can you guys guess what changes I need to do?
We need to import header component and pass that component in React
Where I have to load header component.
main.j6.
So here I have to import my header component. Okay, I have imported. Then
And pass the header component instead of app.
nice. So instead of app, now I have to pass header component. Now, the moment I go back, save it, go back to my browser, it will show me only header component. Now, in this, who is the parent component for my entire application? In this case, who is the parent component?
Header component.
Header component. We have just one component only, right? So how to identify which is the parent component means the component which you are passing directly to your render or to your React DOM. That component is the parent component of your entire application. Parent component means that is the first component which will load. After that, remaining components will load. Okay, so it's totally depends upon you which component you want to make as a parent. But generally, we go with the app component only because this is the default component and this is what the convention everybody is following. Blindly, they are following without any kind of logic. Because this is the default component. It's like an app means application component, application label component. So that's why. But if you want to change the parent component for your application, you can change it. That's completely your wish. I can create a root component and I can consider root component as the parent component for my entire application. Okay. Yeah. Now we will follow one more convention. What is that part means? Now inside SRC, we understood that we can create all our JSX files or JS files, and in those files, we can create components. Now, if you want to create any component, then instead of creating that component directly in the SRC, what we will do inside this SRC, we will create one subfolder that is components. Now inside this subfolder, we will create component. Before creating any component, what we will do, suppose if I want to create footer component, then we will create one footer subfolder inside these components. Like again, inside these components, I will create one more subfolder called footer. And make sure that folder name you are giving in the lower cases. Suppose I want to create something like profile component. Then inside these components, first I will create one subfolder called profile. So for every component, there should be one folder. Now, why we are creating these subfolders means for our component level, so that we can keep all the files in this particular folder which are related to footer. So all the files which are related to each other, we will keep at one place. So for that, we are following this pattern. So whenever I open my SRC, directly I should find my components subfolder. Now all my components will be inside this folder only. Now if I open this subfolder called components, I will find lot of subfolders here. So every subfolder will be for a component. Now inside your footer subfolder, you can create one footer.jsx file. If you want to create a CSS file for footer, inside this footer subfolder, you can create footer.css file. So whenever you are creating a file, make sure the first letter of your file name is in the caps, in the upper caps. In the same way, in the profile also, if I want to create profile component, first I will create profile.jsx file. Now, if I want to add some CSS for my profile component, then I will create one separate CSS file for my profile.css. So like this, every component will have its own JSX file and its own CSS file. Its own JSX file, its own CSS file. You can create JS file also. For example, I have, let's suppose products. I have a products component. So here I will create products.js. Now inside this, I can create my component. And here I can have products.css. So generally we prefer JSX files to create components, and we prefer JS files to write some other logics, some business logic or services logics we will write in the JS file. Okay, right now everybody is going with the JSX only, so you can also get habituated with the JSX only. So if you want to create component, only those files extension should be JSX. Only those files should be extension should be JSX. Like this. Now this is the pattern we are following. So here we have already created header.jsx. So what we will do inside these components, we will create one subfolder called header. And inside this header, I will move this file now. Okay, I want to move into the header. Move. Yes, it will change my import path also now. See, now my header component is inside components folder, under that header folder, under that header.jsx file. So if I go back here, I don't have any issues. If I want to create any CSS, so here right now we have added inline CSS. But we don't want to go with inline, we want to go with external. Then we can create one separate header.css file. Now here, this header.css file, we want to link with this header.jsx file. So how to link your CSS file with JS or JSX file means, for that you have to use import keyword space in double quotes. You have to give the relative path of your CSS file. Now CSS file and JSX file are present in the same folder. So here the path should be /, then your header.css. Save it. Now for this div, I will just add here class. And here I am saying something like header. Now this header, I will select in my CSS file. I will add some background color like black. Then here I will add some padding, 50 pixel. Some margin, I will say some 50 pixel. Now if I go back to my browser, now see it is not applied. Let's see. Import, we have done header. And here we have written header also. Now here something went wrong. Let's see what went wrong. Header component is also not visible. Failed to load. So maybe in index.main.jsx, that path is not changed. Here, see, this path is not changed. Now here, what should be the path? Under components, under header, header. Now save it. Now if you go back here, now you got this styles. Now here, maybe color, I will make it white. Now see here, we are able to apply external CSS, we are able to apply inline CSS. So basically we work with these two only, inline or external. Here we got header. But when it comes to React, this class attribute we have, right? So this class attribute name, we have to take as class name. So instead of using key as a class in React, we have to take the name of this class as a class name. So in React, class name is equals to your HTML class attribute. Now why we have to take class name instead of class means, in React, there is a reserved meaning for your class keyword. Not only in React, in JavaScript also. In JavaScript, you have a reserved meaning for a word class. That is the reason whenever we are using class attribute in React, then we have to use that class attribute name as a class name. Even if you use class, there will be no issue, but you will get a warning. So React will force us to use this class attribute name as a class name. So here it should be class name. You will not find any kind of differences in the visualization, but this is what we have to use. And this is what the rule given by React. So from now, if you want to use any class attribute, instead of using the word class, you have to use the word class name. Class name. Because class has a reserved meaning in React. So whenever we create class component, there we use that word class. That's why this attribute name will be class name. Now we got header. But I don't want to load header directly. I want to load my app component only here. And whatever header I have, that I want to show in my app component. So we got like this. So for app component also, if you want to add style, here you can add some class name and you can say here app. Now already app.css file is already created by your tool. So directly you can select .app and here I will just say text align center and I will increase the font size to something like 42 pixel. Now this CSS will not be applied. See that CSS is not applied. Can you guys guess why this CSS is not applied on this app component?
So we need to import.
Yeah, we have to link that CSS file with this app.jsx file. So how to link? For that, we have to use import keyword in double quotes ./app.css. Remember here you have to add extension .css. Now if you go back here, now see we got this one. But are you able to find some differences here? You have added CSS for app component, this text align center font size. But this CSS are applied to the header component also. It is applied to the header component also. Why it is applied to the header component also? Because header we are rendering under app. It means this is the div, right? This div is starting here, this div is ending here. So whatever CSS you will apply for this div, it will be passed to all its childrens. So header is like a children for your app component now. That's why you got that part. But here, if I go to my header.css and here if I change font size, if I just basically say is 21 pixel, and if I go back here, I got here 21 pixel. And if I say that I don't want text align in the center, I want text align on the left only. So it will be on the left only. Now see, this many CSS files, this many JavaScript files we are creating and JSX files. This is how we are going to work with React applications from now. So under SRC, you should have components subfolder. Under components subfolder, for every component, you have to create one folder. And that component related files you have to keep in that particular folder. So in my header folder, I have header.jsx, I have header.css. In my products, I have product.css, product.js, like this. Profile.jsx, profile.css. Footer.css, footer.jsx. So from now, every component you have to create under components subfolder only. Okay. Understood up to here? Anyone, any doubts or any confusion?
One doubt that app CSS, if suppose if I don't want to be applied to header component, is that possible?
Yes. For that, you have to use module.css. Okay. That will come in future. Anything else, guys? Any doubts in this things what we have learned till now? Okay. Yeah. Now let's create one counter app. Counter app means basically initially if you have seen that whenever I have created that my React application, there was one button. If you click on that button, count was increasing. So like that counter app I want to create. So just we will change the user interface part. So here we will show some text like count value is, initially we will show 0 here. And here I want to show one button, like add count or increase count, something like that. I want to show a button like increase count. Like this button I want to show. Now my requirement is whenever I click on this button, this count should increase. Whenever I click on this button, this count should increase. That is my requirement. Okay. So for this, let's create one counter component. So if you want to create a counter component, what we will do under this components subfolder, we will create one more subfolder called counter. In that counter subfolder, we will create counter.jsx file, and one more file we will create, that is counter.css file. Now inside this JSX file, let me close all this now. Inside this JSX file, we will create one counter component. Now how to create a counter component? Just function name for your component, open parenthesis, close parenthesis, open curly brace, close curly brace. Use return statement, take one div. And simply add here export default counter. Export default counter. Okay, now we want to create this kind of user interface. Which kind of user interface we want to create? This part. So what we will do here, we will add simply one h2, and we will say that counter app. Then here I will create one paragraph. Here I will just say count value is initially 0. Then I want one button, something like increase count. Okay, this is what we wanted in our user interface. Now this user interface I want to show on my screen. So what I will do, I will simply import this counter component in my app component. I will just say here import counter component. I will remove this header part right now. I will just comment. I will comment this h2 also. Okay, now for this CSS also, I won't add those CSS. I will just remove this font size. There is nothing. Why there is nothing? Because right now in app there is nothing. Now here I will render my counter component. The moment I render my counter component, I got like this. Now I just wanted to add some CSS. So here I will connect my CSS file. And now here I will just add some class name, or you can add ID also. I will just say counter. Now in counter.css dot counter, I will select, and I will just add some CSS here. Okay. So for example, I will decrease the width of that div to 500 pixel. I will add box shadow, some 0, 0, 10 pixel red. It will look like this now. Then here I will make it margin from top bottom 50 pixel, from left right auto, so that it will be in the center. I will add some padding, something like 30 pixel. Now it will be like this. Now in this counter, whatever H2 I am using, I will just increase its font size to 32 pixel. So it looks like this. Maybe I will increase it to more, like 37 pixel. So it looks like this. In the same way, in my counter, whatever paragraph I am using, to that paragraph also I will increase font size to 21 pixel. So it looks like this. And here, font style, I will just give italic, and font weight, I will add bold. Okay, just I am adding some CSS. You can add whatever CSS you want. Just we got it. And color I will change to green. I got here green. So count value is something. So our requirement is the moment I click on this button, this count value should increase. This count value should increase. That is our requirement. Okay. Now see, this is our JSX element. This is our JSX element. Right now in this JSX element, whatever content we are adding, that is hard coded. That content is static. If I want, I can create one variable inside my component. For example, I can say var count equals to, I will say 100. I am creating a simple variable inside my component, JavaScript variable. If I want this variable, I can bind with my JSX element. How to bind this variable with your JSX element means, for that we have to simply use curly braces inside our JSX. And inside this curly braces, we can pass our JavaScript code. So this variable I can add here. The moment I add this variable, whatever data we are storing in this variable, that will be visible on the screen. See here I got 100. I can store whatever data I want here. If I want, I can store Kabir also here. If I store string, that string will be visible on the screen. So here if I say hello, it will be hello. It means whatever data I am storing in this variable, that is visible on my screen now. Okay. So if I change the data of this variable, do you think that here that output will get changed, or this data will get changed? Now see here right now it is hello, here hello. Suppose here I am changing it to Kabir. Then on my screen it is a Kabir. If I change it to 100 number, then it is 100. If I change it to 0, it is a 0. Okay. So if we are changing the value of this variable, then that data is getting changed on our JSX element as well. So can we do one thing? On click of this button, can we increase the value of this variable? On click of this button, can we increase the value of this variable? If I increase the value of this variable, do you think that data will get updated here? What do you think? Data will get updated or not?
Yes.
Okay, let's try that. So in your JavaScript, if you want to add a click event or click event listener on your HTML element, how do we add? we use onClick, right? This is your event listener name. This is your event listener name. And to this event listener, we will basically bind our JavaScript function. So basically we add here event handler, for example, increase count. This is how we do in the JavaScript. So this is your event listener and this is your event handler. So whenever you click on this button, now this event listener will call this event handler. This is how we do in the JavaScript. But when it comes to React, slightly the syntax will change. So in React, this event listener names, we will follow camel case. For our event listener names, we will follow camel case. Camel case means first word, all the characters will be in the lowercase. Second word, first character will be in the uppercase. So here we will write onClick. And when it comes to event handler part, in JavaScript, we add like this double quotes. Inside that, we call the function. So in React, instead of adding double quotes, we add curly brace. We add curly brace. And instead of calling the component, instead of calling the function, we will just pass the function name. It means we will not add parentheses. We will not add parentheses. This is what the syntax we are going to follow in React. So syntax will change slightly from your JavaScript to React. So in React, if you want to use any event listener, then you have to follow camel case for that event listener name. And on that event listener, if you want to bind any event handler, then we use curly brace first. In that curly brace, we just pass function name. We don't call the function. Now this function we don't have, we can create this function. How to create this function? Inside our component. Remember, inside our component, you can create that function. So I am creating that function here. Right now here, I will just add one alert and I will say that working. Let me check if I click on that button, whether this function is getting called or not. So if you get that alert, it means your function is getting called whenever you click on the button. So I will go back here. If I click on this button, I got that alert. It means whenever we click on this button, basically we are able to call this function. Now in this function, we have to write the code to update our count value. So can I do here count equals to count plus 1? Or else I can use pre and post operator as well. So right now I'm doing count equals to count plus 1. Same statement can I write like this? Count plus equals to what I have to do? What I have to write here?
1.
1. Now comment. So you can write like this or you can write like this. Will it work if I write like this? I go back to console.log and I will check my count value, whether it is getting increased or not. So let me come back here, go do the inspect, go to the console. You are getting warning message, you can ignore right now. If you click on this, count value is 1. Your count value is increasing, see? But here UI is not getting updated. UI is not getting updated, but your count value is increasing. Suppose if I comment this part, if I uncomment this part, still there will be no change. If I refresh, let me clear. If I click on this, see my count value is getting increased, but UI is not getting updated. Do you know why?
Because initially 0 is writing. Because initially 0 is static value we have, right?
Yeah, so what happened? So here increasing, right? Count value we are increasing. Here I'm just doing console.log just to show you that count value is getting increased or not. Count value is getting updated, but that updated value is not reflecting on the screen. But here if I do some changes, it is getting that. Here suppose if I say 100, I get 100 on the screen. If I say here 5 or 6, I will get 6. Here if I say 0, I will get 0. Now, if you know JavaScript perfectly, you will give the answer. Here you guys can test your JavaScript knowledge now. Think little bit internally what happens. Same task I want to do in the plain HTML and JavaScript. Same task. Same task I want to do in the plain HTML and JavaScript. So what I will do, inside our application, I will create here one subfolder called JavaScript. Inside that, I will create one HTML file. Okay, I will say counter.html. In that, I will create one more file, counter.js. In HTML file, I will just add HTML code like this. Now I can copy this JSX code. I can add here. And I can copy this CSS code. And I can add here. So I will just take internal styling. Style, I will add here. Okay, if I load this document directly in my browser, it gives me this kind of values. So let me do one thing. Yeah, here I have to use class now because class name will not work in your CSS. And here I will say by default 0. If I refresh, I got like this. I got counter app. Now here maybe somewhere else, or again we are doing, yeah. Now this is your JavaScript. Okay, here I will add title tag so that we can understand it. I will say JavaScript. So we have React application. In that also we have created like this user interface. We have a normal HTML file. In that also we have created same user interface. Now here we will add a script tag and I will link that JavaScript file. What is that? Counter.js. Now in this counter.js, I can create one function increase count. I will just add alert. I will say working perfectly. Okay, same task I am showing you in plain HTML and JavaScript how we do. Same thing how we do in the React. That is the difference I want to show you. So that's why I created same UI in React. And now same UI I am creating in separate HTML file. Now this is your separate HTML. This is not at all related to your React project. Separate folder I created. In that I created one HTML file and one JS file. Now this HTML file explicitly I am loading in my browser. This is what I got. Now if I click on this, now let me just check whether that function we are able to call or not. So for that we have to do one more change here. So on this button in JavaScript, we cannot call like this, right? For this, we have to use onClick. And here we have to call that increase count function. See syntax, how it is changing in your normal HTML. If I refresh now, if I click on this, I'm getting here working perfectly. So now we are at the same level. This is the React. This is your JavaScript. React, JavaScript. Okay, here, just for our convenience sake, I will add counter app in JavaScript. And here I will add counter app in React. Okay, here if I refresh, I got it in JavaScript, and here it is in React. Now here I will change that box shadow color. Here instead of red, I will add here something like blue or yellow we can add. Let's see how it looks. We got here yellow. Yellow is not looking good. So little bit we will make it dark like this. Okay, we got like this. So counter app in JavaScript, this is in React. Same task, same UI almost, and same functionality I require. If I click on this, I want this count should increase. So how you will do in plain HTML and JavaScript? Okay, forget about React right now. So in your plain HTML and JavaScript, how do you do that? What code you will write? So my requirement is very simple. If I click on this button, this count value should increase. So what code we do write?
Palette, right?
Count equal to count plus 1.
In JavaScript.
Yeah, we need to take a variable.
Take a loop and put
Yeah.
count equal to count plus 1.
Here, where? Here I should take
Where count equal to 0, count equal to count plus 1.
where count equals to 0, count equals to count plus 1. Will it works? See the HTML code. This value I want to increase.
We need to pass, yeah.
Will it works? How you will change your user interface in JavaScript? What concept you have to use?
DOM element or DOM. We need
DOM
to
manipulation we have to do, right?
DOM dot get element, yes.
So now which part you want to change? This paragraph part you want to change, right?
Yes.
So we have
We
to
need
get
to add the
DOM.
body inside the
Yeah, first we have to get the DOM element of the paragraph. How you will get the DOM element of the paragraph? There are multiple ways. I'm just going with the tag approach. So I can use document dot query selector, and I can pass my element tag name. Now it will return me the paragraph DOM element. Now using this paragraph DOM element, I can do any kind of operation on my paragraph. So I will say that paragraph ref dot inner text equals to, suppose here if I say 100. Now if I go back here and if I click on this, let me refresh. If I click on this here, this content will be replaced with 100 now. It will be replaced with 100. But what I want, I don't want to replace that entire content. So I want my count value is as it is. I want this content as it is. Here, I want to change that count value. Count value I want to change. So how to change the count value? Suppose here if I say like this, if I hard code 100, in that case what happens? If I refresh, if I click on this, I got 100. But I don't want 100. I want here this value should change. Whenever I click on 1, this value should change. So what we do for that? Guys, you are coming from JavaScript. Already we have learned DOM manipulation. Now you cannot answer means you are not working the way you should work. Already we have learned all this in the DOM manipulation, how to update your user interface, how to change style using JavaScript. The people who are coming from UI full stack. Forget about React right now. Okay, we will think about this later on. Now focus on this JavaScript part. In JavaScript, if I want to update this data, nothing but you want to update this count. So how you will update that?
Count plus plus.
So here if I take a variable where count equals to 0, and if I do here count plus plus, do you think that it will
Yes.
increase?
Yes, sir.
Mhm. Why it is not increasing? If I do with the pre-increment, I got 1. Again, I will click, but still 1 only. Got 1. It's a 0. Let me just add here some space. If I click on this one. But if I click after 1, if I'm clicking, it is not changing. Anybody knows why?
I think in the beginning of the function, we are resetting the count to 0.
So can we add this code outside our function? Only first time the variable will be created. And at that time, it will be assigned with the 0. Now, whenever we click on this button, this function will be called and your count value will increase. We got it. So here, to get this functionality, to change this count value, so what we are doing, what code we are writing here? What code we are writing here?
DOM manipulation.
DOM manipulation code, right? Basically DOM code. So basically, right now, you are a developer. Okay, you are a developer. Now there is a DOM. There is a DOM. Okay, let's assume this is our DOM. Now you have some APIs. APIs means some predefined objects and functions. You have some APIs. APIs means predefined functions and objects. This is what we call as APIs. Okay, now what you guys are doing as a developer, you are using these APIs and you are directly manipulating this DOM. You are manipulating this DOM. So your DOM is created by browser. Now using your APIs, you are manipulating this DOM. Directly you are manipulating this DOM. If you manipulate this DOM, then only your user interface will change. So here, all these are your DOM APIs. See, This is predefined object, predefined function. This is again predefined object in that inner text, and you are doing something. So basically you are using DOM APIs and you are manipulating the DOM. The moment your DOM gets updated, whenever your DOM gets updated, your screen will be updated. So basically what we are doing inside our DOM, we are just changing the content of this paragraph. We are changing the content of this paragraph. Changing the content of this paragraph. Now, same application we have created in React also. So when it comes to React, here as a developer, you are not going to interact directly with the DOM. So this is the dev, you are the dev. Okay, you are the dev. Now, let's assume that here you have a DOM. You have here some kind of DOM. Now, in between dev and DOM, here you will have this APIs. You will have this APIs. Okay. Now, in between you and this APIs, a special person, your assistant will come into picture. That is, who is that assistant? Or who is that special person? Can you guys guess? Who is that
React.
special? React. That special person is React. Now, as a dev, you will tell to React how your DOM should get updated. How your DOM should get updated, you will tell to the React. Now, once you tell to the React how your DOM should get updated, what React will do, it will use this APIs and it will update the DOM. React knows best way to use these APIs and to update the DOM compared to developer. There might be some developers who might know best way to use APIs and they can update DOM. But such developers are very rare in the world. Very rare. Because you should have a lot of knowledge for that. But if you are a fresher, then you might not have that much knowledge, or if you have 5 years of experience, still you might not have that much knowledge. But React has so much knowledge on this DOM. So React knows how to use these APIs in the best possible way and update your DOM. So if you use best possible ways to update your DOM, then the performance of your application will be fast. If you use some bad practices or bad ways to update your DOM, then it might affect your performance. That is the reason now we are choosing React. So as a dev, you will take the help of React and React will take care of updating your DOM. Now in React, we are going to learn how to tell to the React how our DOM should get updated. So that techniques we are going to learn in the React.js. Now here also same thing. See, if you see this code here, we are not calling the function. I mean, we are not calling that function. If you see here, we are not calling our function. We are giving this function to React. We are saying to the React, whenever user click on this function button, you call this function. So now we are not calling the function. We are giving this function to the React. So whenever user clicks on this button, this function will be called internally by React. So directly we are not calling, because here we are not using any parenthesis only. So you are not calling until unless you won't call, your function will not be executed. So here we are just passing the function name. We are telling to the React which function need to be called whenever we click on this button. Now React will take care of calling this function. That is the part one. Now in this function, we have to write the logic. We have to write the logic to tell to the React how our DOM should get updated. In this function, we have to write the logic to tell to the React how we want our DOM should be updated. So right now what we want? Right now we want whenever we click on this button, this part should increase by 1. So now somehow we have to tell to the React that whenever I click on this button, this count should increase. This count should increase. So how to tell that? For that, we have to use React provided principles or React provided object or functions. Now dealing directly with DOM API is more complicated compared to dealing with React. So if you directly deal with React, it's easy compared to dealing with directly APIs. Directly APIs. Suppose if you know best way to update your DOM, if you know best way to update your DOM, and let's assume that React also doing the same thing. Whatever code you are writing, same code React is also writing. In that case, your application performance will be better than React application. Why? Because here directly you're manipulating the DOM. But here, we have one extra step. That is, we have to tell to the React will listen our instructions. Then as per instructions, it will update the DOM using APIs. So if you know the best way, then obviously here the performance of application will be more faster. But as a developer, we might not know the best ways, because if you are just updating 1 or 2 things, you might do it in a best way. But if you are writing 10,000, 15,000 lines of code, then 99% there are chances that we are not good with the DOM APIs as a developers. So somewhere, if you create a complex application, you have to compromise with your performance. So we don't want that. We don't want to take that headache also, because writing 50,000 lines, 100,000 lines of code is a headache for us. Instead of that, we can just write 10,000 lines of code. We can tell to the React what we want. React will take care of remaining things. So this is what the core concept you have to understand about libraries and framework. Same thing here. If you are using framework, your library will be replaced with the framework like Angular or Vue.js. So in Angular, you will just learn how to give the instructions to the Angular, how you want your DOM should get updated. Angular will take care of remaining things. So just the way of telling will change. The way of telling, nothing but the way of giving that instruction to React, the way of giving instruction to Angular will change. In React, in some way we will do, in Angular, in other way we will do. So this is the core concept why we go for libraries and frameworks. So right now I have just explained you how your DOM should get updated in normal HTML and JavaScript. So for that we have just written here DOM API. Directly we are dealing with the DOM. But when it comes to React, here we won't deal with the DOMs. Here you will see that we will not write any DOM APIs here. We will not write any code which is related to DOM. So how to tell to the React that if I click on this button, this count should increase? That part we will see in tomorrow's session. That is where a new concept is going to introduce, that is state in React. State in React. That we will see in tomorrow's session. Are you guys understanding the concept? Okay, here in today's session, you have to focus on concept. Okay, don't focus on logic part. This logic you can do, but exactly what concept I am trying to explain, that you try to understand. So this is the concept I wanted to explain. So if you understand these core parts, then learning React will be very, very easy for us. Understood, guys, this part? Let me know on the chat if you understood. Just type 1. If you did not understand, type 0. So I expect replies from you guys, okay? If you don't reply, then next time if you ask any questions, I will also not reply. Okay, I will just keep observing who are replying. If those people ask the questions, then only I will reply to those questions. The people who are not replying, trust me, guys, I won't even reply to you. Okay? So keep replying whenever I ask, okay? So it will be easy for us. Yeah, now the people who did not understood, they have to ask question what you did not understand. Yeah, remaining people can leave, guys. If you understood, leave. We will continue tomorrow. The people who did not understand, they can stay back and they can ask which part you did not understand. Yeah, if you want to ask any questions, you guys can unmute yourself and you can ask me.
So can you explain once again
Which part?
after JavaScript or whatever you explained, right? With
This part?
respect to React, with respect to
So basically, this is DOM, right? DOM means whatever you are seeing on the page. Okay, this is DOM.
Yes, sir.
Now, if you want to do any changes on this, then we have to update this DOM. Okay. To update this DOM, browser is giving us some predefined functions and object. So using those predefined object and functions, we are updating the DOM. So for that, here we have written this code. Okay. So this is the code we are writing to update our DOM. So in this case, what happening? Whenever you click on this, your DOM is getting updated.
Yes.
So to update this DOM, as a developer, you written the code. Okay. You explicitly written the code. Which code? DOM code. Okay.
DOM.
But right now we want to update only paragraph, so it looks very easy. But in future, if you want to do lot of complicated tasks, it will be very, very difficult for us to write this DOM code. It will be very, very challenging. So to overcome these challenging problems, now as a developer, what you will do, you will tell to the React how your DOM should get updated. So it's like you will tell to the React, hey React, if I click on this button, you update this count. I will not write the code to increase this count. I will write the code to tell you what to do.
Okay,
so as a developer, you will tell to the React how your DOM should get updated. Now, based on your instruction, what React will do, it will use these APIs the way we have used here, and it will update the DOM. Now, telling to the React how DOM should be updated is easy compared to we directly update the DOM. Okay.
So internally, React will write the logic, whatever we need to do manipulation. In
right now, here we are writing the logic, right? So later on, React will write this logic for us. And what logic we have to write? We have to write the logic to tell to React what we want. It's like that. Okay.
Okay, sir. Got it.
So tomorrow we will learn how to tell to the React.
Okay, sir. Thanks.